You're walking somewhere, doesn't matter where, sidewalk, park, parking lot, and out of nowhere, there's a dog. Not your dog, not a dog you've ever met, a dog that 5 seconds ago didn't exist in your world at all. And something happens in your body that you did not authorize. Your hand starts moving before your brain finishes the sentence, should I? You're already crouching. You're already making a voice you would never use in a meeting. Oh my God, hi. He. You are, for a few glorious seconds, a completely different person, and the dog didn't do anything to deserve this. It just existed near you. Here's the part that should bother you more than it does. This isn't a you thing. It's not a dog person thing, or a grew up on a farm thing. Put a fluffy animal in front of almost any human being on Earth, and the hand goes out. Every time. Nobody's ever fully explained why your nervous system does this. So let's actually do that today. Obvious answer first. Animals are cute. Cute things feel good. We want to touch things that feel good. Simple. Done. Except that's not actually an explanation. That's just restating the mystery with different words. Cute isn't one feeling. It's a very specific, very trackable neurological event. And once you understand what's actually happening in your skull when you see a fluffy creature, it's just cute stops being an answer and starts being the beginning of a much stranger story. Start in Vienna in 1943. An Austrian ethologist named Konrad Lorenz, arguably the founding father of the entire field of animal behavior, noticed something odd. Certain physical proportions, a big rounded head, big low-set eyes, a small nose, chubby cheeks, short, clumsy limbs, produced an almost involuntary tenderness in adult humans. He called it Kindchen schema, baby schema. His theory? Those features evolved in human infants specifically because babies that looked helpless and adorable got picked up, protected, and fed more reliably than babies that didn't. Evolution wired a very specific visual trigger into adult brains, and then it wired the trigger to fire on anything with those proportions, not just human infants. Which means your brain doesn't check species ID before deciding something is worth protecting. Big eyes, round face, stubby limbs. Could be a human baby, could be a golden retriever puppy, could be a baby hippo you're watching on your phone at 1 a.m. for reasons you can't fully explain. The circuit doesn't care. It just fires. Lorenz had 0 brain scanners. He built this entire theory from watching people. Decades later, researchers finally put people in fMRI machines, showed them images ranked by baby schema intensity, and checked what lit up. Lorenz was right. The orbitofrontal cortex, a region tied directly to reward and motivation, activates more and faster for high baby schema images. This isn't a metaphor for your brain likes cute things. Your brain is running an actual, measurable reward calculation, and cute animals score extremely well on it before you've touched a single hair. Your skin isn't one sensor. It's dozens of specialized receptor types layered on top of each other. Pressure, vibration, temperature, stretch. Buried in that mix is a nerve fiber type called a C-tactile afferent, and it does something almost none of your other touch receptors do. It barely cares about pressure. It cares about pace. Specifically, slow stroking, somewhere around 1 to 10 centimeters per second, roughly the speed of a hand running down a dog's back. Fire that receptor, and the signal doesn't just map something touched my arm. It routes straight into circuitry tied to emotion, social bonding, and reward. In plain terms, your body has a nerve fiber whose entire job is to make gentle stroking feel emotionally significant, not just physically detected. And fur, the texture, the give, the warmth, happens to hit that exact stroke speed sweet spot almost perfectly. So when you run your hand down a dog's back, you're not just petting a dog, you're activating a pathway that evolved for bonding with other humans, and it doesn't know the difference. That's the wiring. Here's the chemistry. Oxytocin. Studies have measured it directly. A few minutes of petting a dog, making eye contact, being physically close, produces a measurable spike in blood oxytocin. And the part that sounds almost too good to be true, the dog's oxytocin spikes too at the same time from the same interaction. You lock eyes with a strange dog on the street, and for 90 seconds, both of your nervous systems run the exact bonding chemistry that links parents to children and partners to each other. You didn't just pet a dog. You both, briefly, fell a little bit in love. That's not sentiment. That's measurable neurochemistry. working exactly as designed. Researchers in Japan tracking this effect found something else worth noting. Dog owners whose dogs held eye contact the longest showed the biggest oxytocin spikes, the loop scales with engagement. Cats, interestingly, show a much weaker version of the same response, not absent, just quieter, which starts to look less like some animals trigger this and some don't, and more like a dial, one that's been turned up furthest in the species that's spent the longest time evolving alongside us. Which raises a question most people never actually stop to ask. Why soft things? Specifically, why does a golden retriever trigger this and a smooth river stone doesn't, even though a stone can feel just as pleasant in your hand? Texture is doing something specific here, and part of the answer starts before you could even form memories. Human infants spend an enormous fraction of their earliest life pressed against warm, soft things. Skin, blankets, another person's body. That pairing, soft plus warm equals safe, gets written into your nervous system before you have language to describe it, which means it isn't a belief you hold. It's closer to a reflex. Warmth, specifically, does something measurable to your stress response. Put your hand on something warm and slightly yielding, and, reliably across studies, heart rate eases, skin conductance drops, cortisol trends down. Your autonomic nervous system isn't waiting for you to decide you're relaxed. It reads warm, soft, alive as a direct signal of safety and dials down your threat response on its own. And for cats specifically, there's a sound layer on top of all this that's genuinely strange once you look closely. A purr is produced by rapid, repeated contractions of the laryngeal muscles, vibrating the vocal folds on both the inhale and the exhale, typically somewhere in the 25150 Hz range. Researchers have pointed out that frequencies in roughly that band overlap with ranges used experimentally in some bone density and soft tissue therapies, which has fed a popular, but still not fully settled, hypothesis that a purring cat might be doing something mildly therapeutic to whoever it's sitting on. The research isn't conclusive enough to call this proven, but it's a strange enough coincidence that a cat lying on your chest, doing absolutely nothing for your benefit, might be quietly vibrating you at a frequency some clinicians use on purpose. Now the genuinely most interesting part. Why does the urge feel almost impossible to override? You know you're supposed to ask before petting a strange dog. Your friend's cat has already hissed at you twice this visit. You reach out anyway. Some of that is approach motivation, the same reward-driven pull that moves you toward food when you're hungry, aimed here at something your brain has already flagged as high value. The motivational system moves your hand before the should I ask first thought finishes forming. You're not deciding to reach out. You're catching up to a decision your body already made. And then there's a phenomenon researchers actually gave a name to, cute aggression. That sudden, slightly unhinged urge to squeeze something adorable, to say I could just eat you up about a puppy you have zero intention of harming. A research team at Yale found this isn't random noise. It looks like a regulatory response. When positive emotion spikes past what your nervous system can comfortably process, the brain generates a small opposing impulse to bring the system back toward balance. The urge to gently demolish a kitten with affection isn't a glitch. It's your nervous system doing damage control on an emotional overload it wasn't expecting. Which brings up a bigger question. Is any of this actually a human thing, or do other species do it too? Increasingly, the answer looks like no. We're not alone in this. Researchers have documented primates in the wild handling animals of other species with what looks, to trained observers, like deliberate gentleness rather than predatory interest. Capuchins carrying and grooming small animals with no food or survival payoff attached. Captive great apes frequently form real attachments to animals living alongside them. Coco, the gorilla, famously taught a modified form of sign language, kept pet cats for years, requested them by name, and, according to her researchers, produced signs interpreted as grief when one of her cats died. A gorilla mourning a house cat, because the relationship, however cross-species and improbable it looked from the outside, was real to her. Touch, and the drive toward it, isn't a human invention. It runs deeper into the animal kingdom than we usually give it credit for. Which brings us to the relationship that arguably built this entire video, humans and dogs. Not a coincidence. Not just proximity we got used to. Genetic estimates place dog domestication somewhere between roughly 15,000 and upwards of 30,000 plus years ago. depending on the study, which means, at minimum, this has been running for more generations than we can meaningfully picture, long enough that we didn't just get used to each other. We changed each other biologically. Dogs read human behavior in ways their closest living relatives, wolves, including wolves hand-raised by people from birth, simply don't. Dogs spontaneously follow a human pointing gesture. Dogs track where a human is looking. A 2015 study found that mutual eye contact between dogs and their owners triggers the same oxytocin loop we covered earlier, a bonding response wolves don't produce with humans the same way, even raised identically. Then there's the detail that, once you know it, you can't unsee. Dogs have a facial muscle, the levator anguli oculi medialis, that's either missing or barely developed in wolves. It's the muscle responsible for that inner eyebrow raise, the puppy dog eyes look that makes something in your chest cave in a little. A 2019 anatomical study proposed this muscle likely developed specifically because dogs that could produce that expression got more attention, more food, more protection from humans, generation after generation. The puppy eyes aren't a cute accident. They're the end product of thousands of years of dogs figuring out, with startling precision, exactly which face gets a human hand to reach out. We didn't just domesticate dogs. In a very real sense, they helped author the terms. Cats make a useful contrast here. Their domestication history is roughly a tenth as long. Some estimates put it closer to 4,000 to 10,000 years. And it shows. Cats have kept far more of their wild behavioral repertoire intact, and the human reading skills dogs display so effortlessly show up in cats only in a much more limited form. Which is a good reminder that none of this is really about animals as one category. It's a set of specific evolutionary relationships, each running on its own timeline. And dogs simply have the longest one with us. Here's the part worth actually sitting with, though. What happens when this need goes unmet? Touch deprivation isn't a soft, abstract idea. It's a measurable physiological stressor. During periods of isolation, people who live with pets consistently report lower baseline stress and better mental health outcomes than people who don't, and researchers have specifically tried to isolate whether that's just having company, or whether the physical contact itself is doing real work. The evidence increasingly points to the touch mattering specifically, not just presence in the room, but hand on fur, weight against your leg, actual tactile contact. In hospitals, animal-assisted therapy programs measurably lower reported pain and pre-procedure anxiety. One frequently cited study tracked patients before and after a 15-minute dog visit and found drops in both self-reported pain and cortisol that held up even after controlling for the simple novelty of a visitor. In schools, therapy dogs measurably lower stress markers in kids during high-pressure moments. And the timeline is fast. 10 to 15 minutes of real physical interaction with an animal is enough to produce a measurable shift in cortisol and oxytocin. Your nervous system isn't slow about this. It knows exactly what it's asking for. So maybe the real reframe is this. We treat "I can't stop petting animals" like an endearing personality quirk. The reason you're always late, because you got ambushed by a dog on the sidewalk. But what it's actually pointing at is much older and much less trivial. Touch is one of the oldest ways mammals tell each other you're safe, I'm here, this is fine. For almost all of human history, we lived in constant physical contact with animals, working beside them, sleeping near them for warmth, raising them, relying on them. The distance we now consider completely normal between humans and animals is on an evolutionary timescale, brand new. Your nervous system hasn't caught up. It's still expecting to be near something warm and alive on a regular basis. So no, you were never actually going to walk past that dog. The only real question was ever going to be how many seconds it took.